Welcome to Wisdom Vlogs, and this week I'm joined by my very special guest and beautiful friend Maya. She is a yoga teacher in southern Spain, and she set up Soul Yoga, what was it, over 10 years ago now, Maya?
Yeah, this year we'll celebrate 11 years.
Wow, fantastic. I had the absolute privilege to be able to live as part of Maya's yoga community about 2 years ago. And we were there for about 7 months, and it was absolutely inspirational. And it really opened my eyes to yoga because I've always been interested in yoga, but for me, it was the first time that I was introduced to what feels like to me very traditional yoga. So it encompasses the whole body of yoga, if you like, which I hadn't experienced before. So I'm going to hand you over now to Maya to share the wisdom of her heart about everything that she's discovered on yoga. Welcome and thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. And I'm so grateful that you've asked me to speak today and to share my thoughts and my feelings about the path of yoga. I started practicing yoga nearly 18 years ago when I was pregnant with my second child. I started practicing for the physical benefits, and it was probably about a year down the line I realized through another teacher that there was so much more to the practice of yoga. She introduced me to the spiritual side and the philosophy, and it just opened my eyes and it opened my heart to the practice. 10 years ago, I decided, more than 10 years ago, actually, it was 12 years ago, I decided to train to be a yoga teacher. I first started teaching Shivananda yoga, and 3 years ago I retrained with Integral yoga. They're both from the same lineage, and I know it's changed my life completely. It's not just a practice. Yoga is my life. I like to think that I teach from the heart, and I do teach in a traditional method. So my classes are not just about coming and practicing for the physical benefits. It's for the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual support of the teachings of yoga that we try to share with our students here.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what I loved and thrived on when we were there with you as well. So in terms of yoga, I know one of the things I loved the most was that we would do a class, and then we would sit down on certain days and we'd read some spiritual text. And I know one of the books that you recommended and I'd started to read and actually completed on our journey back to the UK was the yamas and niyamas. And I want to go back and revisit them because they felt so profound. Every page just contained so much more wisdom that I hadn't thought about, and just different ways of looking at life and looking at how we experience life. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So the yamas and the niyamas are regarded as the yoga gems and the yoga jewels. They're actually part of what we call the Eightfold Path, or Ashtanga yoga. And I don't mean Ashtanga yoga as the physical form of yoga. Ashtanga yoga is also known as the 8 limbs. It's part of Raja Yoga, which is the yoga philosophy.
Okay.
Some of the texts that we study the Bhagavad Gita, but one of the other texts that we study, and I've got the book here, is the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And we study the commentary by Swami Satchidananda, who was the founder of Integral Yoga. I support this book with this one. This is The Secret Power of Yoga. I don't know if you remember this one.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
This is a gem. It truly is. I've read this and studied this book 4 times with different groups of students. It's written by an integral yoga teacher called Nischala Devi, and she was is the only female to do a commentary on the Yoga Sutras. All previous are done by males. So this truly does come from a heart perspective.
Yeah.
So going back to the 8 limbs of yoga. Now the yamas and the niyamas are right there at the beginning, they are. So they are kind of the yoga's 10 commandments. There's 5 yamas and there's 5 niyamas. Yamas means a kind of abstinence, and the niyama is more observances, they are. So we liken them to kind of the 10 commandments, or maybe the 10 virtues in Buddhism, but they are yoga's moral and ethical way of living, they are. So they come first. So I'll go through the 8 limbs path for you, and then we'll go back to the yamas and niyamas. So you've got the yamas to start with. So they are kind of our abstinences, things that really we should try to avoid. And then we've got our niyamas, and they're our observances. And there's asana, and that's our physical practice, the postures that we practice in yoga. And then there's pranayama, which is the breathing practices or breath control. Then there's a practice called pratyahara, which is withdrawal of the senses, followed by dharana, which is concentration, dhyana, which is meditation, and then finally samadhi, which is absorption or the superconscious state, nirvana, enlightenment, whatever you want to call it. So it's a very definite path, it is, towards that superconscious state that most serious yogis are aspiring towards. Maybe in this lifetime, you never know. So the yamas and niyamas are our foundation, and they teach us so much. They do. They teach us how to be a better person, how to live in this world as a kind and caring and compassionate human being. Teaches us how to live from the heart, and teaches us how to be, what's the word? Not just what we say with our words, but it teaches us how to think, and also with our actions. So for example, the first of the niyamas is ahimsa, which means non-violence. So you think about that as non-violence, not just in a physical sense, but also in a with our words, because we can be really unkind with our words, and also with our actions. So it's not just as literal as it sounds, you know. And then the second of the yamas is satya, which means truthfulness. And again, that's referring to truthfulness in our speech, and in our actions. And the two of them kind of pair together. I mean, they can, one can work without the other, but they pair much better together, they do.
Does that also go for non-violence toward yourself and your thoughts? So it's not just like an outward action, it's also that being kind to yourself, being truthful to yourself. So it's kind of like a 360 degree.
Yeah, most definitely. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, they apply to our self-work on ourselves. You know, we practice them. This is the if we can't live in a kind and compassionate way, and if we can't kind of follow these guidelines that we are given, then we can't really progress on the spiritual path.
Mm.
I mean, there's plenty of people that profess to be very spiritual, but they're not actually practicing what they're preaching, and they're not actually working towards self-development of self. And these gems, I mean, they literally change you if you put them into practice.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a group of students at the moment that we're doing one a week. We are. So each week I send them their practice. And so I think Monday now, they're going to be Monday come in, it will be week 4 for them.
Mm.
So I sent them out the information about ahimsa, and then practical ways to practice ahimsa, and also then questions for reflection.
Mm.
You know, questions to ask themselves during the week, you know, so they could actually then put the practice of ahimsa and work with it for their own self-development.
Yeah. Because the one thing that I noticed as well, and I haven't really noticed this with any of the books that I've read, these books aren't just for reading, they are books for living. And I guess you can pick up these books and read it from cover to cover, but it feels like the intention of these books is to read maybe one page, to live it, to really experience it and to embody it before you move on. And that's what I absolutely loved in your classes. And I know that you continue to do that with your students. Like you said, you know, you'll send out some of the homework where they will read, understand, put it into practice, come back and reflect. And it feels such a really deep way to go into a book and into text, to really be able to start living that, because it feels like it would be very difficult to live it just by picking it up and reading it, because I think you might even just pick up like 2 or 3% that you might start being able to live. To be able to really embrace 100% of the teachings, it feels like you've got to break it down into small steps. That's my perception and feeling on it. And also that it's just, it never ends. You know, it doesn't feel like you do that and then you've embodied it and you move on. It feels like it's something you can always be revisiting, because like you said, it's that life practice. And what I observed with you as well in your teachings is that you know, you live this practice. It is your life. It is not something separate to you. It is not a job or a career that you live your life and then you go and teach yoga. It is your entire life. And that's something that takes dedication and practice every day of your life right to the end, isn't it? I don't think you ever perfect it or master it. Do you agree?
No. I mean, even though I teach yoga, I'm a student of yoga, and I always will be. And I always have to remember that, not get too big for my boots. And the beauty of the ancient text is that you go back over it again and again and again. And I've got two philosophy groups that are still ongoing, albeit some of it online at the moment. They're still on a Wednesday. We are still studying the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and on a Thursday we are studying the Bhagavad Gita. And I was with the group yesterday. They were online, and we were having a similar conversation about, you know, these kind of teachings, you can't read them literally. They are to be taken within. You can't take too big a chunk either. We spent the whole of the class yesterday on one. It's called, in the Bhagavad Gita, it's called a sloka, but it's a small sentence. And we spent the whole lesson just on that one sloka, reading it, talking about it, giving our own kind of perception on what it means to us. And then we've got to take that out into our daily lives, out into the real world, and then start practicing.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. And with the yamas and the niyamas is a fabulous book. I don't have like a real book copy. I've got a PDF that I had printed many years ago. And it's a book by a lady called Deborah Adele, titled The Yamas and the Niyamas. And that sets itself out as a 10-month course. It does. It's fabulous. And it's so easy to follow. And so, you know, you've got your 5 yamas, your 5 niyamas, there's your 10. That's your 10 months. So you study in one each month. And it's not really like a calendar month. It's more like 4 weeks. Yeah. Because then you will read and discuss and study a certain part of the book. And about a quarter of the way through, we would stop. And then at the back of that particular section, there would be a question for exploration. And then it would be something that you would practice. And then we would come back the following week and we would discuss, okay, so how did you get on? And we would, you know, not everyone needs to share every week. And that is putting yoga in action, or putting it into practice. Yeah. And that's when the change happens. That's when the change happens within you. And it's a very subtle and slow process, but it helps us then to change the way that we think. And it's so easy. It's just so easy. That's it.
So you've obviously got your established groups at the moment, but if anybody wanted to join in, could they do that?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's an open study group. We do the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali on a Wednesday, and we do the Bhagavad Gita on a Thursday. We're actually coming towards the end of the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. We're on chapter 7. We're on chapter 17, and we've been studying it for 3 years. So I would imagine we've got 1.5 chapters left. We probably got about maybe 3-4 months of study left with that book. And only yesterday we were discussing what next, which one next. You know, we did think about maybe starting the Bhagavad Gita all over again. And because that's it, you start again from the beginning.
I'd love to join that next week when you set that out.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom on yoga. I'll add all the links below in the show notes. And yeah, is there one thing that you'd like to share just before we sign off?
Well, there's just so much to share, and there's just so much to say. I mean, I love the practice of yoga. I love the physical. I love all the breathing practices, the meditation, how it teaches you how to relax. And I love watching the transformation of other people, of students. You know, when they first arrive and they first step into the center and they first step onto their mats. And within a short period of time, they first start realizing the physical benefits. It could be something so simple as being able to bend down and pick something up off the floor that previously had been a difficulty.
Yeah.
It could be, and then they start feeling the mental benefits from it. You know, their emotions become more balanced. And yeah, you know, these changes, they're very, very subtle, but they're very, very effective.
Would you say it's enhanced your life and your health and well-being?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I'm not perfect, and I still got so much to learn and so much further to go on my journey. And that's what it is. It's my journey. And And I'm very grateful that I found yoga, and I'm very grateful that I've been able to follow the true and traditional teachings through being fortunate to met some amazing teachers in my life that share their wisdom freely and continue to do so.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me on Wisdom Blogs. And if you liked what we talked about today, please subscribe and press the like button. And if you have any questions for Maya, please put them below, and Maya will be happy to get in touch and answer those questions. Thank you so much again, and take care.
Thank you, Lisa.